Alien Strand Podcast.
You want to learn about CE5 and extraterrestrial contact? Download my new book, now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, and 14 other platforms. Book authored by Donald Ledesma. CE5, Frequencies of Contact.
There was some paperwork that indicated that this was from the Zeta Reticuli star system. Now, how they obtained that, I haven't the slightest idea. But it wasn't just from the Zeta Reticuli star system. It was what they called ZR3. So it was a third planet in that star system.
Welcome to this episode of Alien Strand Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Ledesma, and welcome to today's show. Yeah, it's going to be a great one, man. A good one. I really hope so. I'm sure it will. I hope everybody's doing well out there in UFO land, UAP land, OVNI, like they say it in Mexico. You know, it's UFOs is something that, you know, has been intriguing a lot of people, you know, especially when they see them up in the skies, you know, below our feet, everything like that, because we are in the middle. Hello, you knew that was coming. So yeah, the middle, you have to watch the films. Go check it out. Amazon Prime, let's see, Fossil TV, Tubi TV, and all the other good ones. All right, the middle part 1, the middle part 2, and the middle part 3 are floating out there. We're trying to get the middle part 3 on Amazon Prime. It's been a slow thing. I don't know what's going on there, man, but you know, we have to you know, kind of push it there, and some little things we got to fix before these platforms can let us upload it. Some of them will let us upload it. Some of them are really nitpicky about things, right? But hey, that's just the way it is. Come on, that's the way it is. But I'm glad you guys are listening today. You know, we got some interesting stuff to talk about today. But hey, if you're new to ufology, welcome to ufology. Yes, that's what Alien Strand is about. It's about learning ufology, learning about extraterrestrials. You know, of course, the word is alien, you know, what we used to call it back in the day. Now it's extraterrestrial. That is the correct terminology of today, right? 2025. Come on, man. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and just welcome everybody here. You know, we talk about Bigfoot, we talk about paranormal, you know, we talk about a lot of interesting things out there, you know, that's kind of strange and things that we don't really understand. And there's a lot of folks out there that are confused, right? If you are confused, you want to learn more about it, go to Alien Strand Disclosure Project there on Facebook. Go look for it. You have to be selected, okay? So if you answer all the questions, right, it's going to ask you like 4 questions. Answer them all, man. Answer them. So if you answer them all, you more than likely you will get in, right? If you don't answer them all, if you just say whatever, you're not going to get in. Okay. And it's a learning platform where you'll catch a lot of these podcasts. You will see a lot of the other people's content that you won't see on regular Facebook or anything like that. But I think that's the best place for you to start, right? And to learn, right? Because that's what it's about. It's about learning things that we don't understand. And we're all learning together, including myself. Yes. I might be out here, speaking in front of the mic, speaking in all these places. You even see me on a couple of TV shows, right? Let's see, Roswell at 75. If you watch that on Tubi TV, go check it out. That's a Fox production. I was actually on that film. Yes, I was. It was a documentary. So go check that out. And I believe I'm in one of the other ones. I think the middle part 2. I'm in that one too, all right? So that's my own. Yeah, I throw myself in there. And I'll probably throw myself in the last one. Hello. I have to, right? It's just because I want people to know who is behind the film, and I am the filmmaker, right? As far as the documentarian, right? Behind UFOs, especially extraterrestrials, because, we're so used to seeing these extraterrestrial vehicles up in the sky, right? Or in the ocean, USOs, what they call them. And then all this military good stuff that's been coming around, that's been going around the government, and then a lot of them say, yeah, we want to know, and then they go silent, right? Behind the veil. That's what I call it, behind the veil. This thing is, unfortunately, it's in a lot of people's pockets, man. It's because of the funding, right? A lot of these UFO enthusiasts, what they call themselves, right? Or they're out there to, I hate to say it this way, but there's some out there that have some really good information, and they don't want the money. They want to tell the world like it is, right? Hey, I get it. That's great. That's wonderful. And there's some that you have to fund a lot of organizations to get the word out, because it's not easy getting this information out to people. That's why we're on these platforms like Spotify, iHeartRadio, things like that. So that way you guys can listen to it, and it helps pay a little bit of getting the information out there as well as donations, right? We take that as well, right? But I'm talking about these guys that are behind the veil, in the government veil, where they're in the pockets of the government, where the government says, you know what? If you talk about it this way and say it this way, we'll give you about $240 million. How about that? Sure, right? Money talks, BS walks. That's just the way it is. And unfortunately, man, there's a lot of players out there that are playing that game. I'm not pointing any fingers, right? Hey, but so what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? The information is out there for you to learn, and then you don't know if you're getting the correct information. And this is what kind of gets me, right? Because we're trying to teach you about extraterrestrials and all the good stuff that's out there, and trying to teach you the right way, and then these other people come out and they throw you in a different direction, right? Like, I don't know, they just kind of cover it up in different ways and things to make you not believe it, or just give you little pieces of the breadcrumbs, right? Instead of giving you the whole loaf of bread, they just give you the little crumbs. Well, here in Alien Strand, we're going to give you the whole loaf of bread, the wrapping, the everything on there, right? And you're going to get the whole enchilada, like they say, right? Because we don't hide behind nothing. We say it like it is. And because we think that everybody should know and learn about ufology, because we interview a lot of people that have been abducted by extraterrestrials. Believe it or not, yes, it does happen. It does happen. And it does happen to people that have been traumatically affected. Yes, affected. They've been affected so badly that it traumatizes them into having some sort of a PTSD effect, right? To where it bothers them so bad that you can't sleep, they can't eat. Most people, if you note this, I've noticed this, that most of the people that I have talked to, right, and I have interviewed in person, most of them smoke cigarettes. It's like a nerve tick, right? And I'm going to say at least 80 to 90% of them do smoke, like chimneys. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just something that I have put together myself as far as making these documentaries about people that have been abducted or have witnessed something up close that scared the real living crap out of them that they don't understand, right? And that's what these films are about. It's not about highlighting the UFO and aspect of the craft or whatever, which is great information to learn. But and these films, I'm teaching you about the extraterrestrial itself and what it does and how it manifests and how it manipulates itself with people as well, right? Because it works. It's like a little, I'm going to say like a knife, right? It's a double-edged sword on it. It'll cut you going in, it's going to cut you coming out. And that's what we've talked about over and over and over on these podcasts, that, these things are not something to be playing with. But there's some extraterrestrials out there that really want to contact you and really want to give you the information without harming you whatsoever, or a different way, right? And I've come across a few of those as well. So it's not like I'm spitting in the wind. No, it's just that I'm telling you that there's different ways of looking at this, right? And if you're listening today, this is your first time listening, this is the way to understand what you are seeing and what you want to see and what you don't want to see, right? Because it's, like I said, it's a double-edged sword in this world. It's not just seeing the saucer itself. We talk about who's flying this saucer. We talk about the electronic magnetic fields that make this saucer go, right? The propulsion systems. We talk about the extraterrestrial itself, what it's made of, what its agendas are. We talk about everything like that here. We talk about how they manipulate people, or how they help people, or how they change people, right? Or how they traumatize people. And it's usually very traumatic, very, very traumatic, when you're seeing something that you don't understand what you're seeing, right? It's just like, I don't know, let's just say when the first time you saw the movie The Exorcist or something like that, right? First time I saw it when I was a kid, I was 79 or 78. It scared the living daylights out of me when I first saw it. I've never seen anybody float in the air. I mean, I know it was a production film, but it was based on a true story, right? So if somebody that was standing there and saw somebody's head turn around, or just started floating in the air, it's traumatic, right? So in that sense, an extraterrestrial visitation of something of an alien craft that you're not used to seeing, especially in a different time, in a different date. And I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about the past, right? Because we're gonna dive into the past a little bit, right? And we're gonna talk about the Westall Encounter, which was a UFO encounter that happened with children out there in Australia, right? So the thing is, we're trying to say is how do you get yourself to understand exactly what you're seeing, or exactly what they were seeing? And a lot of times when children are witness to a lot of these things, they want you to cover these things up. Or sometimes back then it was a lot of hush hush, because even when there was a teacher that actually saw this back then in 1977, I believe. Somebody went to his door a week later and asked him what he saw. He explained what he saw, and they told him, you didn't see nothing. And if you say you did, bad things are going to happen to you and your family. So he never spoke about it until now. Today's date, from 1977, he never spoke about it until today, of what he saw, right? Because the curtain has been lifted on the veil. It's not just the veil anymore, because the United States government or different governments have already executed the part of giving the information to the people, because they don't understand what they're seeing themselves. These extraterrestrial vehicles are coming extremely too many times, and are starting, more and more people are starting to experience the extraterrestrial entity, right? Or the UFO craft. And now the governments are, let's just say, our military airplanes, things like that. They're starting to see more things that they don't understand as well. So why not put it out there, right? They lifted up the curtain. They said, all right, let's go ahead and talk about it, because we got some stuff that we don't know what we're seeing. And I believe they did that on purpose, because they wanted to get the more public scientists out there to try to tackle the science behind what makes this craft go in flight, right? In the different directions. Its propulsion systems and how it works. And how the electronic magnetic fields fluctuate around the craft while it's going lower to the ground, higher up in the sky, right? So I think that they did that on purpose. This is my personal opinions. So how do we get the public to understand of what people were seeing back then, right? Because the story, you know, it dives real deep, right? And it's often overshadowed by a lot of different stories that are out there, and it really doesn't come to life or come forward to the forefront. I'm talking about the story of 1977, right? So in that story, there were students and teachers that witnessed a UFO hovering silently in the schoolyard for during school hours, right? So this was broad daylight. They were seeing this thing floating above the trees. It was a large silver disc, and everybody saw it. High school students, everybody was out there, right? And what does this remind you of? The other story, right? That happened in Zimbabwe. But after the sighting, there was reports that there were strange markings on the ground, right? There was nausea. Some people had missing time that followed as well. And some of the authorities that were there at the time quickly dismissed it. They just said, you know what? We didn't see it. It didn't happen. Y'all saw it. But, oh well. But a lot of students never forgot. So I have this little segment here, probably about 4 minutes long. I want you to listen to the story about it. And so that way you get a good logistics of exactly what I'm talking about here. So let's go ahead and play that now.
During the 50s and 60s, it wasn't just the Americans who were seeing flying saucers. At the Westall School in Australia, several hundred students saw an object hovering over this power line tower on their athletic field. An event they vividly recall 50 years later.
A student came into the classroom, you know, there's flying saucers in the oval, there's flying saucers. And everybody ran out. And I remember the fear and the hysteria of all the students.
I couldn't believe it because what I was seeing wasn't possible.
It was vertical, horizontal, move away from us, back towards us, appear somewhere else.
My God, you know, well, but it was exciting.
It was like that, and then all of a sudden it just turned on its side, and I could see that it was a round disc.
The children saw the disc begin to descend into this wooded reserve at the end of the school's running path.
I ran towards the corner of the school, jumped the fence and ran towards where it looked as though it went down into the trees, and then stopped dead because it was right in front of me on the ground. Like a disc with a slight rise in the middle. I also heard a low sort of a humming noise, and I felt a bit of a heat coming off it as well. And it started to take off pretty well straight away. It had all bluey purple lights around the bottom. Don't remember seeing any windows. And it took off to about probably 4 or 5 metres in the air and then turned on its side and just went zoom straight up so fast that there's just nothing even nowadays that could go that fast.
Shortly after the object departed, the authorities converged on the school.
We had Army, Air Force, police down there cordoning off the area to prevent any of us entering the area or disturbing anything.
We got called to assembly. The headmaster said, "You have not seen this. You do not talk about it. You'll be in trouble if you do."
For the first time ever, the school science teacher agreed to describe what he saw that day, providing we concealed his identity.
It was not a mirage. There was something physical in the sky. It was silver. It could hover. It could move slowly. It could move very rapidly. Eventually, it moved away to the other side of the oval and down behind some pine trees. I was not then, nor ever have been, able to use my knowledge of the world, nor my scientific training, to provide a rational explanation.
What he said next sheds light on why the school's staff have remained silent all these years.
I was a knock on the door one night. Two older men, one in uniform, asked for my description of what I'd seen. I was then told that I hadn't seen anything, but I'd made it all up, possibly because I was drunk, and that they would have to report that fact to the education department and I would lose my job. After that, I was told that I would be prosecuted under the Official Secrets Act, and I was told that there wasn't anything there when I knew there was, and that I had to keep quiet about it. Why did I have to keep quiet?
The Westall landing may not have been an isolated incident. 4 days prior, a then young engineer in nearby Baldwin was taking photos in his mother's garden when something caught his eye.
This tremendous flash of light, and I looked up and I saw this object, and I had a Polaroid camera, and I pulled this up, hit myself on my face, and I took the picture, and I got the photograph here.
This is the original Polaroid.
That's it. There at the top it is. It looked like it was made out of some form of metal, and it was engineered. And being an engineer, I was sure it was. And that's when I took the photograph, and it tipped around, and I could see the bottom, and it looked like it was rotating to me. And that was it. And then after that, it sort of gave a bounce, and it rocketed away to the north, very high speed.
Can you describe the acceleration?
It was like almost instantaneous, like it had been shot out of a gun. Wham, you know.
Air Force officers showed up at his doorstep, asking for every detail of his experience.
And they also had some photographs of similar things. And they also had a book which had pictures of things in which they didn't leave with me, but at least I had to look through. But they said it was an unidentified flying object. So that was it. You know.
What was the implication?
That it didn't come from anywhere on Earth.
All right. So there's their story. And they're pretty much telling you that they saw something. And they witnessed something that is hard to describe. And they told so many people about it, even the children there at the time, when nobody could understand or comprehend exactly what they saw until they saw the photographs, right? And that story is a large, a large story that had happened back then. That's about the most exciting thing that had happened in that little area. And of course, they had missing time. There was burn marks on the ground. There was even a researcher out there that went out there. His name was Bill Schockler. They investigated this, and then they were stonewalled afterwards, right? Why would that happen? And there was even another story that 1966, I believe, it said over 200 students saw a silver disc land and take off in broad daylight, right? In Clayton, South Victoria on April 6, 1966. The military showed up within hours. They alleged and told the students and the teachers to be quiet. Sound familiar? They found crop circles in the area as well, but they were ignored or erased. And you got to ask yourself, even in this story or those two stories there, and the story from Zimbabwe, which is awkwardly similar, like almost mirrored, why wouldn't a UFO or a large silver disc land or hover around a large school area where hundreds of people could see? And was this a controlled observation of them, right? Like, let's try this, see what happens when all these people come out and see this. I'm talking about the extraterrestrials thinking. And then this story happens, right? So the mirrored one was the aerial school encounter in Zimbabwe in 1994, right? 30 years later. Totally different country. 62 children saw a silver disc and beings with large eyes during recess. That's what we called it back then, recess, when we had a 30-minute or a 1-hour break, which like your PE today, right? When we were children, they let us go play out in the yard for recess. That was our time to go play with our friends. But when these children saw these beings in Zimbabwe, they said that some had telepathic messages about the future of Earth. And they were all investigated by a Harvard psychiatrist named Dr. John Mack as well, just to make sure that all these 62 kids weren't crazy, right? Does that make sense to you, right? Yeah, I get it. Send somebody out there. Just make sure that everybody saw the same thing. But 62, come on. And that's what I'm trying to say here. As far as investigations, as far as the similarities, as far as everything that happened in that one encounter in Australia, right? And there was really a lot more in Australia. But before we go any further, let's take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute.
Alien Strand Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the show. Hope you're enjoying today's content. If you are, give us a thumbs up, give us a like. Please share this podcast if you're listening on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Castbox, Deezer, Amazon, and any other podcast platform. Yes. Please share it. All right, getting back to what we were talking about. So we're talking about similar sightings in Australia as well, right? So in 1868, an alderman, Parramatta, New South Wales, Frederick Bellingham, spotted what he says was an ark for traversing the water. He says was floating in the sky before landing in Parramatta Park. This is in 1868. On January 22nd, 1954, 3 people, Gawler, South Australia, spotted a white flying UFO overhead, followed shortly by a RAAF jet, right? This is the military. 1960s, January 1966, a farmer reported seeing a large saucer-shaped object, as well as so-called nest of reeds in the swamp where the UFO was spotted. And of course, 1966, the Westall, right? And then there's just a lot of different things. Even in 1970s, there was a gentleman. It was in 1978, October. It was a 20-year-old Frederick Valentik. Disappeared while piloting a small Cessna 182 aircraft over Bass Syriat to King Island, Tasmania. He described as a flying saucer. He was described as a flying saucer enthusiast. While he was flying, he said he had contacted Melbourne Air Traffic Control that he was being accompanied by an unknown aircraft. Then he disappeared. So there's been a lot of strange occurrences with UFOs up in that area in Australia as well. We just don't hear about it too much, right? Especially because, I live here in the United States of America, and we do spread the podcast into many, many different countries, and we do like to talk about different countries and their actually interactions with UFOs, extraterrestrials, and everything in general, right? That comes to that note, right? Because we want people to learn about extraterrestrials, and we want people to know what it is, what they're seeing up in the sky, or standing in front of them, or trying to communicate with them. So, the story that you just heard that these crafts were right there in front of them, and they were able to witness it. Some of them heard like a humming noise, which I've talked about over and over on this podcast. Me and Terry Lynch have talked about the D-sharp hypothesis, and just knowing that these extraterrestrial vehicles, when you're in close proximity, you are in with a frequency, and we believe that these UFO crafts do resonate some sort of a low frequency. It's a hum of some sort. Sometimes it's inaudible to the human ear at times, where this is why dogs go nuts, farm animals, everything in general like that. When you see a craft, or even in videos, when you always hear the dogs going nuts, right? You hear like the cows or coyotes or whatever in the background. When there's a UFO present, you'll hear them just freak out and go nuts. Because the low hum frequencies they can hear, we can't. And in some instances, the human ear can pick up the low hum frequency from these crafts. Now, we talked about the Boogosphere, how it left a radiation burn on the ground after it was picked up, and we were kind of freaked out about it because we didn't know if the guy got sick, or all these people are handling this sphere right now that came down, and we don't know if they're getting some kind of radiation poisoning. But they said they put their meters on it, and there is no radiation coming off of this sphere, right? Which weighs about 20 pounds or more, but within that range, right? So But it is interacting. There's lights coming on in the inside of the sphere that they can see with the microscope. That it is alive. It is transponding, which means something is controlling this sphere, right? And this is what we talked about, these extraterrestrial craft. Were they there just to be seen as an experiment, right? Talking about the extraterrestrials. And is there some sort of a pattern with children, right? Why show themselves more to children than an adult, right? And we think that children are more often open to this phenomenon, right? This is why they're more frequently targeted. In other words, their minds are still open. They haven't been poisoned with society and everything that comes in between as we turn into adults, right? This is why children are innocent, right? And they don't know, they don't understand just yet. And this is the possibility of why these extraterrestrials are targeting more children environments, right? And then they have telepathic contact. And they always talk about messages about Earth, how we got to keep it green, how we need to stop polluting, how, it needs to last a long time. And they say how they can only observe us without interfering, right? And to me, it's like they observe but not interfere. But when you show yourself, or you show your craft, or you land on the ground, or you stand in front of the children like they did in Zimbabwe, that's interfering. That's actually, you're interfering with the human rational thinking, right? By showing yourself as who you are, as far as an extraterrestrial, to a human being who's never seen you before, and to communicate, that to me is more interference, right? So that's a double-edged sword if you think about it. And why the schools, right? And then we start thinking, well, maybe the children are more credible because they're often unconditioned, right, by skepticism, right? Or they're possibly, they're doing a generational contact or testing some sort of a theory, right? Let's say we show ourselves to kids more. Maybe when we do show ourselves, it won't be as bad because we've already projected that. Or are they showing themselves to children with maximum visibility? If you think about this just for a minute, they show themselves at maximum visibility to show that there is a minimum threat, right? In other words, they're not harmful. They're not here to hurt you. It's like showing up to a nursing home, right? And do the extraterrestrials, are they having some kind of psychological observation of some sort? Are they testing the fear responses in mass groups? Because these people were kind of scared. They were and they weren't. The only ones that were fear-mongered were the ones that were threatened by humans. If you think about it, they weren't threatened by the extraterrestrial himself. They were more threatened by the humanistic characters, which was the military or their local police department or their local men in black. Or are they monitoring some sort of genetic lines of some sort of hybrid theory, right? In other words, if we make these little ones and mix them into the school, let's see how they're doing with the other children, where they are living amongst us now as hybrids, right? We've talked about that before as well. In Australia, there's this place called Pine Gap, Australia, right? And it's a secret U.S. Australian base, which they call it the Australian Area 51. And a lot of people have sworn to seeing sightings of spheres and lights over the outback in that general direction, right? And these are like the supporting patterns that around the world that are kind of similar and that have the same connection, right? Like Skinwalker Ranch has it. Skinwalker Ranch is more of an interdimensional version of it, right? Of its theories, right? They're talking about like the inner Earth, right, with their orbs, and then the like humanoid sightings, or these Skinwalker creatures, or even ghosts as well, right? So in that sense, that's what that Skinwalker Ranch is all about. There's one in Norway. It's called the Westall Valley. There's frequent sightings there with unexplained lights. Mount Shasta in the United States. There's a lot of UFOs, alien contactees, and spiritual portals, right? So we always hear about Mount Shasta. We talk about it in our film, The Middle, Mount Shasta. And Teotihuacan, Mexico, right? It's an ancient city that's aligned with the stars. But they're seeing a lot of orb sightings and magnetic anomalies, right, in that general area. Now, if you've seen, or if I've talked about Juanito Juan there in Mexico, in Danipulas, Mexico. It's kind of hard to say that, but he lives there, and he's got many, many sightings, and he goes to a lot of these Aztec or ancient ruined cities as well, and he takes a lot of photos and videos, and he catches a lot of these orbs, not just above his home, but actually following him. They've already made themselves known at his house. A lot of videos out there. You need to see this. If you go follow our video podcast on YouTube or on Rumble, you'll see a lot of these examples of his videos that we put on our shows. You know, and what's the common theme of these global sightings, right? So what happens most of the time? They're quick to shut you down. They confiscate your footage. And then the intimidation comes in, right? And then now we have the recent UAP disclosures from 2020 to 2023 and 2025 now, actually, of point to a non-human craft, right? That we've talked about earlier. Why the shift? Why talk about it? Why pick up the veil, right? Why lift the veil? Now, and that's what we've been trying to talk about tonight here on Alien Strand Podcast, about the global phenomenon, not just there in Australia, but worldwide. And how we explain these common factors of extraterrestrial craft and extraterrestrials as far as visually as well. To show you out there that these extraterrestrials do exist. They are out there. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute.
Alien Strand Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the show. Hope you guys enjoying this content as much as I love giving you the content of, extraterrestrials, UFOs. And if you do like it, give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart there on iHeartRadio, Spotify. Follow us there. Give us some notes there, comments. You can actually comment there on Spotify. Yes, you can. So give us a comment. Follow all my links that are there for Alien Strand, right? And that will help go a long way into teaching other people about ufology, right? Because that's what it's about, right? So let's finish talking about the actual recap of everything that we're talking about today, about group contacts, right, with extraterrestrials, whether it's the 1977 Australian school or the 1966 sighting, right? And it's part of a large global phenomenon that's been happening for a long, long time. And then we have school-based encounters, suggesting long-running observation programs. In other words, are these extraterrestrials doing a program on us to say, okay, let's go ahead and show ourselves more in schoolyards throughout the years to get them adjusted or acclimated to us, right? Or do they have some sort of a hybrid already mixed within our human society to where we can't tell who they are? And maybe those hybrid children are telling the other children, it's okay. Don't be afraid. Or are extraterrestrials, they're just monitoring us. They're guiding us, and they're warning humanity of what is to come if we keep going in this same direction, right? And you have to ask yourself, these questions at times. Are we being studied or are we being protected, right? And really, in reality, what did those kids really see? And why aren't we getting the full story on the alien contact? Because a few of them were contacted. Missing time, remember that. I mean, what are your thoughts about that? What are your questions? My questions are, what happened to those children afterwards? Did they have dreams? Did they have more visitations at home? Were they followed, or were they just left alone? And what were the dreams, or what were the visions in those Australian encounters, right? And it's just very mind-boggling at times, right? But we have to learn to understand the full concept of extraterrestrial encounters and contact, right? Because that's exactly what it is. It's contact. It's all contact. And I believe that a lot of them are just giving us the full understanding of what these extraterrestrials are. Sometimes we get the information of where they came from, Zeta Reticuli, just like Bob Lazar talks about. Betty and Barney Hill talked about. And, even the Cal Hill story was there in Australia as well. And that one, they did experiments on her. She had a triangular shape on above her navel area, right? Where she believes that her eggs were taken on that story. That one was a strange one indeed, because they had people following that weren't friends of theirs and ended up having the same encounter as them as they ran into the field, and then boom, they were back in their cars. Right? The other families disappeared. They didn't hear from them again. But they had a story to tell, right? Cal Hills. And that is the whole strangeness of everything, because not everybody's ready to accept it or to understand what exactly happened to them. And then some are. There's a lot of people out there, especially people in our ASDP group, which I love very much, these folks, because they were able to tell their stories and they were able to put it on the table and able to bring it to the forefront without them being shamed or blackballed in any kind of way. Because now is the time to do this, because people are starting to understand and accept it more and more than ever. Especially with podcasts like Alien Strand Podcast or any other podcast that's teaching you about ufology. Not just giving you the story, but giving you the breakdown and the knowledge that you need to understand it a little bit better, right? And we hope you really stick around with Alien Strand Podcast. We're starting to get back on the road again. We're going to have some more films coming. Possibly next year we'll start filming again. Totally different films, no more middle, but totally different films are coming. And Alien Strand is here to show you the way of ufology and the understanding of extraterrestrials and the understanding of humanity and yourself. And the expectations of accepting what is happening to you today, whether you're being abducted or visited. But we're here to listen to you and to understand. Just know that. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast as much as I did. Yes, I did. Please catch our past podcasts, right, that we've had. I had an actual video podcast, this last one. Catch it on YouTube, Rumble. Let's see. It was on Facebook, so I think it'll stay on Facebook for about 30 days or so. But catch it on YouTube. It was a pretty good one about the Burgosphere. I gave a lot of information that. And there was an audio one about ancient civilizations, right? Where we might have come from. Maybe, right? It's a possibility. I've been really thinking about that one ever since I did it. I don't know why. It just stuck on my mind. I hope it's stuck in yours too. But, thank you guys for listening to Alien Strand Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Deezer, CastBox, Amazon, you name it. We're out there. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a like. Please share this podcast with any of your friends if you thought this one was interesting. We got more to come. Yes, we do. All right. So until then, click on our all my links if you're looking for Alien Strand on social media. We are on TikTok. Yes, we do. We do a TikTok too. So go check us out there. Click on the all my links on this podcast. And you'll catch all our social medias everywhere, even some donation places there. It would really help. I really appreciate it. You can go to Patreon. You can donate there or check out these podcasts there as well. Be a free member. You get some perks if you're a paid member, but it's okay. You can still join for free. All right, guys. Thank you for all the love. Thank you guys for listening to Alien Strand Podcast. We'll catch you guys on the next one. I really appreciate you guys. See you on the next one. You guys have yourselves a good day. Have yourselves a good evening, and have yourselves a good night.
about CE5 and extraterrestrial contact, download my new book. Now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, and 14 other platforms. Book authored by Donald Ledesma. CE5, Frequencies of Contact.